In this week's Do Something With Your Marketing, I am newly back from social media marketing world. And one of the things that I had asked you in the 2 weeks ago, I think it was in the newsletter, was what questions did you want me to ask for and keep my eyes up about at Social Media Marketing World for things that you wanted to know from other folks in the space. And so we have a list of some questions that folks asked and brought back some answers. Ted asked, Talkwalker seems to track digital media across the web. However, if I wanted to pull all of the articles and events for a list of companies, would Talkwalker do that? Yes, it would. In fact, I spent an inordinate amount of time with the Talkwalker team at this event. So much so that for fun, I'd end up working at their booth for about an hour. You absolutely can do that. You would be tracking all of the coverage, the articles, the events, including from their accounts. You just set that up in a fairly elaborate search query within the tool, and so that would be the best way to get that. The exception would be is if you needed like 100% coverage of everything. There's no tool that will guarantee that you get every single piece of media out there because there's just too much of it. But that said, you can subscribe to individual company blogs. You can follow their specific social media channels and make sure, and you can just set that up within the Talkwalker interface itself. Andrew asks, how do you know what to benchmark against? I asked 5 or 6 different folks this question. I asked, how do you benchmark for your agency and or your company? And I was really surprised that most folks don't. In fact, nobody does. Nobody said this is the way that I do my benchmarking. A couple of attendees said they use very broad qualitative data, or they use something like a tool like SEMrush or RFs that can get you basic traffic data, but that's about it. And the reason, at least 2 folks said when I asked, well, why don't you benchmark? Because they don't trust that the data is reliable, understandable, or they are just trying to keep their heads above water, getting their own data, and don't have time to invest in that competitive benchmarking. So I thought that was a useful thing. Dennis had a whole list of questions here, and there are 5 of them. Number 1, what new social media platforms are you considering for your B2B brand? Oddly, most of the folks I talk to in B2B are looking at YouTube, which is not new, but it's not been a focus point for a lot of folks. They're looking at LinkedIn much more heavily. Again, not new. But they're looking much less at Facebook and giving some more thought to Instagram because everybody and their cousin is touting Instagram as the thing. The other thing that, again, completely not new, the opposite of new, as old as it gets, there was a tremendous amount of interest in both email and search ads. The number of folks who were in the Google Ads session for display and for search and a few other of those sessions really, I think, sticks out at a social media conference that A, the sessions even existed, and B, that they were so well attended. Kind of shows that, at least on the B2B side, for sure, people are feeling the pinch of having too few platforms to work with. One thing I did not hear, and this is something that I am urging our customers to give some thought to, is redefining your perception about what you think social media is. Remember that a social network is a form of media in which the value is commensurate with the number of people in it. Right? I've said this a number of times in the past. When you read a book, this book has value, whether one person reads it or 1 million people read it. Conversely, if you're the only person on Facebook, Facebook has no value, right? The more people who are on it, the better. Which means that from a social perspective, there are plenty of places on the internet that meet that criteria of a social network. Private forums, Reddit, GitHub, Stack Overflow. There are accounting forums. There are accounting discussion boards. There are listservs. So if you are feeling the pinch, as many B2B folks were, of just throwing money down the drain, really give a lot of thought to what are the non-traditional networks. The other thing that, again, was pretty prominent this year, very heavy, was on content marketing, which, again, not exactly this conference, and chatbots. People were talking bots, left, right, and center, for both B2B and B2C. Dennis's second question was, what new social media platforms are you considering for your B2C brand? The darling of the show probably was TikTok, which seems an awful lot like Vine. if you look at the way people talk about it and use it, a number of speakers said that they were at least experimenting with it or trying it out. Chatbots, particularly for B2C, for customer service, was hot. And then again, a ton on the content creation side. So there's a lot of people focusing on the content you should be creating for social media, which is interesting and sort of ironic given the opening keynote by Michael Stelzner talked about how instead of trying to make a small impact on a big audience, we all need to pivot to making a bigger impact on a small audience, focusing in on who it is that we serve and making sure that we serve them as best as possible. But it's fascinating just how much overlap there is between the content creation sessions at Social Media Marketing World and then the content marketing things at a conference like Content Marketing World. So this there wasn't a ton that was like sparkly brand new, like this is the thing that, like in years past, look back to 2007 when suddenly everyone had to be on Twitter or everyone had to be on this or that. There was a discussion about WeChat, particularly if you are marketing overseas, and especially in Asia, that you need to be on. And there were a number of folks from Europe who were talking about local networks and things. So there are some B2C things there. I was also surprised there was not a ton of analytics. Very, very, very few sessions on analytics, all compared to how it has looked in the past. And again, a lot on Instagram. Question 3, when you post on social media, do you consider the algorithm? If yes, how? Everyone was considering the algorithm. Everyone was concerned about the algorithm. Everyone was like, how do we beat the algorithm? Mari Smith's entire keynote was about the way the algorithm is changing. So was Michael Stelzner's. Mari was recommending that people invest a lot of time in video, use retargeting ads to grow your reach on that video, then build a custom audience from that video to do lead generation, and then from there use Facebook groups as a way to retain loyalty. So she calls it the Mari method. That said, that method is still very vulnerable to the algorithm, particularly on the group side. One of the things that we tried out earlier this year, we actually set up the Trust Insights Analytics for Marketers group originally on Facebook. And right out of the gate, boy, did we get pummeled by the algorithm. People were, 5 out of 100 people were seeing any given post. And this is for a new group that still had a lot of early engagement. So I can't imagine what it is for the larger groups. Actually, no, I don't have to. There's another social media group I'm a part of that has 10,000 people in it. And like 4 or 5 people see each post. It's crazy. So beating the algorithm, still interestingly, people trying to do their best. One of the tactics people are looking at was using the messaging bots and trying to get engagement on Facebook Messenger in particular. That's a tough sell because, again, that's getting crowded there. I'm sure you've noticed there are messenger ads already appearing in your social feed. So there's that aspect. And huge surprise, everyone talking about influencer marketing. Number 4, are you involved in encouraging your wider teams to be more active on social? If so, what's working well? I went to a couple of the enterprise sessions, and it's interesting. People are not encouraging employees to be social. People are instead pivoting all of their interest into influencer marketing. How do we get more influencers to help promote our brand? Which, if you don't do it well, it's just an enormous waste of money. Ursula Ringham from SAP did a really terrific workshop on just the basics of influencer marketing, the considerations that you need to take into account in order to make it work at all for you. And one thing I thought was really interesting out of that session was there was a lot of emphasis on regulatory compliance with it. So there was a lot there. But no, in fact, I don't think there were any employee advocacy sessions this year, which is weird because in past years, even just as little as like a year or two ago, I think there were employee advocacy sessions, and there were employee advocacy vendors on the vendor floor. This year, I don't recall seeing any employee advocacy vendors there at all. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That space seems to have gone somewhere else. And Dennis's last question, of course, what's your number one site for social media marketing insights? A few folks were very kind to say us, Trust Insights, which I always appreciate. Social Media Examiner and its blog, of course, are a massive, massive draw. Individual authors, no surprise, promoted their own blogs. The various folks who were presenting. I thought it was interesting that there were some sites that were not mentioned, not prominently. Marketing Profs, the Marketing Profs blog, I think, is one that should be on your reading list if it isn't already. The Content Marketing Institute blogs. Robert Rose actually had a fantastic session on building content on things. And then for other social media stuff, nobody mentioned my favorite blogs, which are the developer blogs. When you read the developer blogs of these social networks like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, and you read what the developers are announcing to the people who use their software, you can sometimes get a jump start on major changes that are coming because they want people to adjust their software to make it more compatible. So there was no mention of that at all. So I guess we'll see. We'll see how folks are otherwise keeping up. So those were the questions that I asked and asked around, and I don't feel like there was a major oh my goodness, we have to do this thing. There were a lot of good sessions and a lot of very helpful sessions, I thought, particularly on things like YouTube, making your YouTube channels more impactful. But it really, in discussion with other attendees, really feels like social has kind of gotten a bit of a bloody nose in this past year because organic reach is effectively zero, right? That's just the way it is. Paid is getting more expensive as inventory runs out, prices go up, nature of supply and demand. And a lot of companies are saying, so what did we pay all this money for if we're no longer able to access the audience that we supposedly have? I think social's at a bit of a tipping point. Social media marketers need to be showing some results, need to be showing some serious impact, and they're not right now. One of the things I highlighted in my talk was the February 2019 CMO survey, in which CMOs said, we are not seeing impact from social media despite massive investments. And social's budget took a 2% hit from 13% of marketing, the marketing budget, to 11% in this most recent survey. Partly because, there's no, there isn't that, there's that delivery of the results. So, a lot to unpack from this year's show, but at the same time, no big light bulb moment. And so I would encourage you, if you're thinking about your own social media marketing, be doing more. This is going to be a huge surprise. Be doing more on the analytics side, on measuring to see what's really working. Because if you can, in an era when budgets are getting cut, and in an era when algorithms are getting more difficult, you've got to double down on the stuff that's working. Experiment. Be doing the 80-20. Focus 80% of your time and effort on what works. Do the testing 20% of the time to make sure that you are finding opportunities before everyone else. What a problem with any conference at all, is that what you see on stage is already not the best stuff out there, because it obviously, if you're not going to share your secret sauce from the stage, but also when people are presenting things like case studies, it's already old, right? I remember one of the things that my former CEO Todd Deffrin used to say in sales pitches was, I thought it was a brilliant turn of phrase. Do you want to read the case study, or do you want to be the case study? And when you look at what's being shown at conferences, it really is the case study, which means it's not the newest and the greatest out there. So thank you for submitting your questions, especially to Ted, Andrew, and Dennis. And if you have additional questions as I go to more and more conferences and things, please reply to the newsletter. Let me know, and we'll bring back the good stuff as best as we can. As always, thanks for reading. Please subscribe to the newsletter if you're not subscribed, if you're just watching this, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Thanks for watching. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.